We are back with another Agree or Disagree to count down the weekend of the Portuguese Grand Prix. Another mysterious racetrack that we are going to on this unique F1 2020 calendar. Now, of course, I'm pretty sure you might understand the concept of Agree or Disagree by now. We ask for your opinions on social media, whether that's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. You comment below, but just like below a bog standard post, your opinions. We'll pick a few, and then we'll say agree or disagree, and explain why. Unfortunately, no Lyle today. Work commitment calls. Unfortunately, however, I've got a very special guest with me today. One of the up and coming YouTubers, I would say. He's absolutely killing the scene right now with his brilliant videos. Really, I'm enjoying them. Of course, link to his channel will be in the description below. It is Ben from BMPH F1. Ben, thank you so much for coming on today. Are you excited to do some agreeing or disagreeing with some of the fans' opinions?
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for having me, by the way. It's sad to see no Lau here, but yeah, I'm looking forward to this, man. I've been a fan of Agree or Disagree for quite some time. So yeah, looking forward to this one.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's one of my favourite series to make, and Lyle does it as well. In fact, if you do a good enough job, you might replace Lyle. Which is, I mean, I've been looking for someone to replace him for like 4 years now, and no one's voted Trump. So you could be the lucky candidate, the lucky winner, you could say. No, he's sackless. He's unsackable. Right. So let's start with the first opinion, then let's dive into it. And the first opinion comes in from the brothers Hunt, and they say 2-day weekends aren't the way forward in the long term. 2-day weekends, of course, which is something that is making a lot of noise on social media and stuff like that. Of course, we had it unexpectedly at the Nürburgring. We're having it at Imola the week after the Portuguese Grand Prix. People want Friday practice scrapped. But to this, I'm just gonna disagree to this.
I'm gonna agree on this one.
Oh, you can agree with this one. Do you want to give your reasons why first, Ben? Why you agree with that?
So I mean, it hasn't necessarily been. We're yet to see how it's gonna work out coming into Portugal, but I feel like, especially from the team's perspective, Friday practice it's an essential part of their routine, and it helps them obviously with the setting up the car first of all. It also helps to lay rubber down on the track, so as the weekend goes on, you get a lot more track evolution, and the drivers are able to maximize the performance out of the car more. We saw last weekend at the Eiffel Grand Prix, where obviously it was raining on Friday, so there was no free practice running. It gave us a lot of going into qualifying. It was a lot more unpredictable as to who would be the favorite going into qualifying. We saw Verstappen really taking the fight to Mercedes in free practice 3, and I really enjoyed the qualifying, the battle between obviously Hamilton, Bottas, and Verstappen. Verstappen this season is really doing a lot with especially the car that he has compared to the W11. He's definitely he's getting the most out of the car, and probably even more so at times. But yeah, I think with regards to 2-day weekends, I think yes, as fans, it can provide a more exciting build up going into qualifying, and especially the race, because on Friday they do a lot of long runs. Therefore, if they don't have that data, it can provide a lot more unpredictability in the race, and they might not know how long the tires will last during a particular stint. But then at the same time, I feel like the strategy is also like a very important part of Formula One in general, and it can be it can sometimes even make or break a race, like we saw last year at the Hungarian Grand Prix, where Mercedes pulled like a master stroke with their strategy by switching Lewis onto a different tires towards the end. And so with Friday running, you get those long run long runs done on the Friday, and they really help to the teams to understand how the tires are gonna, how long they're gonna last during the race. Give them a rough estimate, and then also help with with setting up the car, and so on and so forth. And so I still feel like it's a very important part of a race weekend, but I'm happy to see it trialed and tested, especially in Portugal this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, of course. Well, reason why I'm saying disagree is like what you said there before, Ben. It's we haven't fully yet seen it in full function, even though we did see it kind of implemented at the Nürburgring, which was we didn't know it was going to be coming. However, it was still the same top three in terms of qualifying, and if it wasn't for Bottas's DNF, we could have had the same podium as we had done throughout the majority of the season. Hamilton, Bottas, and of course Max Verstappen. So it didn't really throw up any unpredictability in that way. However, nobody ran the hard tyre all weekend. So when it came to the race, people did gamble on the hard tyre, and it didn't pay off for some of the teams. I think Vettel was one of them. I think one of the AlphaTauris, I think, might have jumped on the hard tyres. One or two teams trialled it, and of course it didn't work. Which then, of course, adds that unpredictability. Unpredictability is if, for example, there's no. They might do a couple of laps on the hard tyres. I really don't know, just to get some data or even try and do a big long run. In limited practice, I really don't know. But if a team has a problem early on in practice on Saturday morning, and they get a fix in time for qualifying and they get out there, they've got no data whatsoever on either the soft or the medium tyres. So and that could be one of the top running teams, which just blows everything out of the water, and it becomes really unpredictable in that sense. I know everyone's excited for it to be introduced in Imola, and it has been for some time, but I'm like, yeah, we've seen it at what was to come at the Eiffel Grand Prix. I thought the midfield was a bit mixed up because of that. I think a lot of the you know how tight the midfield is. A lot of those teams rely on data and stuff on Friday morning, and Friday afternoon, which of course puts them one over the rivals, and they haven't got that anymore. I haven't got that for that race at Imola, but like I said, we still will be getting the same top three. I mean, at one stage, like you said there, Ben, Max was doing pretty well in FP3, and he looked strong in qualifying, and I'm like, oh, maybe this is a good thing. But as it happens all the time, Mercedes just find a couple of tenths of pace, and boom, they're locked out the front row, and you're like, oh well, yeah. That's the end of that, then, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
They've won it. But no, I think I want it. I think I would like to see it trial out throughout the course of a full season from them when teams have got no development whatsoever with their car, because a lot of teams have got data on the car already, even though we are going to some tracks that F1 hasn't raced at for some time, like Portimao we're going to this weekend and Imola next weekend, and of course the I keep calling it the Eiffel Grand Prix, the Nürburgring, where we haven't raced in 7 years, and none of these modern cars have driven there before. Like, teams have got very little data and stuff, but I suppose they've got enough data to maybe set up the car, look at the style of the track, and go, this looks like a Russia kind of track, or this looks like a Spain kind of track. You know what I mean? Then set it up like that and just give it a go. But I want to see it, I want to see it trialed out, and like what you said there as well, Ben, about the for fans, it would be fun, like I said before, and of course the teams, they would be heavily compromised by this. But if you're going to a Grand Prix and you're only going there for 2 days, not 3 days, I mean, Friday practice nothing really happens, but you're seeing F1 cars live in front of your very eyes, and I would love to have FP1 on Monday, FP2 on Tuesday, FP3 on Wednesday, FP4 on Thursday, FP5 on Friday, just to have a full week of F1, even if it means absolutely pointless whatsoever. But no, I think in terms of racing, to make it more exciting, I think the less data teams have, hopefully the more exciting racing can be. But it's one of those things where we will never know until we see it in action. So the next one comes in from Jack Milton, a guy who has put in one or two really good opinions on agree or disagree before, and of course who has featured on this as well. He says, well, first of all, he says, damn, what a guest. Hope you're enjoying BMPH F1. Yes, we are. Well, I say we. I am as well. I hope Ben is as well. I hope Ben, you haven't
Oh,
instantly regretted
100%.
coming on straight away. Like, well, what have I signed up for here? Um, he says, well, what a guess as well, which is of course very, very true. He says, my opinion is that Jenson Button is the true Rainmaster. His best wins were taken in either full wet or changeable conditions, i.e., Canada 2011. I think he's put Austria 2010, but I think he means Australia 2010.
Yeah.
Hungary 2011. And while recognised, it's not understood how good he was. So basically, Jenson Button, there's loads of other drivers who are classed as the Rainmaster. We know we will talk about them in reasons why. Of course, Jenson Button was highly skilled in the wet. He had a reputation for that. But is he the true Rainmaster? I'm going to disagree with that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say the same disagree.
Yeah, do you want to give your reasons why first, Ben? Why you disagree with that?
Okay, so to clarify, he is one of the best drivers in the wet, like, of all time. I think there's no doubt in that. The performances he's put on display, like, throughout his career have just been, they've just been amazing. And, the standout one is obviously Canada 2011. At one point being pretty much a lap down. And essentially, in changeable conditions, you have to be able to react very quickly and be in the right place at the right time. And also, be very, versatile to the conditions and be able to, feel like, okay, maybe it's at this point I need to make the switch to slicks if, you have a dampening track, or if it's like, you have to make that intuitive decision to say, oh, okay, now I need to make the switch onto, maybe intermediates or full wets. It's very it's very dependent on the driver's feel, other than the team strategy or like them or their observations. And generally that just comes with being a very skilled driver in wet weather conditions. For him, he obviously growing up in the UK, it's a I'd say it's an advantage considering the weather here is always terrible, especially most of the time it's just like damp and it's cold and it's so the British drivers are tend to be exceptional in the wet, and Jensen is no different. He knows how to read certain situations really well, and especially towards like the latter stages of his career, and also at his McLaren years. On a few occasions he outperformed one of the best, if not, well, I consider him to be the best in the wet, Lewis Hamilton. He genuinely at times out and out beat him, and which just goes to show how classy he actually was when in changeable conditions. I definitely feel that I think also there was also China 2010. I remember that was a really good one. I can't remember exactly whether that was fully wet, but there definitely was rain at some point. And I remember him, making the choice not to come in to pit like a lot of the other drivers did, and eventually that paid off. So at times with wet weather races, it can depend on luck at certain points. You just have to gamble on whether you think it might rain or not at a certain point in time. And normally it's that intuitive decision, and that to make that decision in the moment is what separates the good drivers from the great drivers. And so I think he definitely is one of the best wet weather drivers. The true Rainmaster, I wouldn't say that, but definitely one of the, I'd say top 10.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, Jenson Button, some of his best drives have been in the wet. Of course they have, and like you said, it's a driver's instinct to go, well, okay, I can feel it getting a bit, slippery. I can feel it getting a bit, whatever, I'm losing grip. I need to come in for I need to come in for wet tires. I need to come in for dry tires. And Button has mastered that not on more than one occasion in his career. And I think it boils down to when back in his karting days, not just him but other drivers have done this as well. Where if it's raining, you would still be on slicks, and that's the best way. Driving on dry tires on a wet track, and that's the best way to drive in the rain. And certainly that separates in some occasions the men from the boys in terms of good drivers need to drive in any condition thrown at them, whether that's dry or wet. And at times we have seen in the past where it can be bone dry one minute and absolutely monsoon weather the next, and you need to be on the money to make that call straight away, whether that's team driver, and be able to change very, very quickly from a dry kind of sort of style to a wet sort of style, because the lines are different. You're more aware. You need to be careful with the car. You've got spray to deal with now. There's all sorts you've got to deal with, and Button was one of the best at it, absolutely. But there's other drivers out there who you would consider better, such as Schumacher, Senna, Hamilton, and probably many others as well.
Verstappen, yeah.
Verstappen as well. Verstappen's another one as well. Yeah, good suggestion as well, that one, Ben. And better, Jack mentioned two or three races there. You could probably name even more with Schumacher, with Hamilton, with Senna and others as well, where they were amazing in the wet. And for me, I would say Button's best drive, I would probably say, was not only Canada 2011, but Suzuka 2011, which was a phenomenal drive at a time when Red Bull was dominant. But another one that doesn't get mentioned enough, in my opinion, is Belgium 2012. How quick he was that weekend, despite, of course, with the crash at the start, then the restart, just nobody could catch him that day. And that was true Jensen Button. That was incredible that day. And probably Brazil is another one. I'm sure there was a rainy race in Brazil, and again, Button won that one, didn't he? So, so
I think it was 2012 as well.
Yeah, McLaren's last win. Breaks my heart every time I say that. But no, Jensen is ultimately definitely one of the best in the wet. I wouldn't say he is the best out of all the true Rainmaster, definitely. But I think Jensen maybe deserves more credit than what he's getting at the moment. At a time when he was driving cars where they weren't that good, and he was outperforming them. Like, he won in Hungary 2006. He finished third in 2004. He beat Lewis Hamilton in 2011. Those things aren't mentioned enough, in my opinion. Even though he's not one of the best of all time, you would probably give him. I would say he's probably one of the best in the modern era of Formula One. But I think maybe some other drivers do overshadow that. So let's move on to the next one. The third opinion of agree or disagree comes in from YouTube this time, from CPB1. Another long one, so deep breath. He says, Formula One needs 2 more teams. There's far too much talent out there without any seats. Most notably, Perez and Hulkenberg, and the limited amounts of seats available, as well as the race-paced nature of F1 doesn't F2 drivers doesn't give F2 drivers a chance to shine when they are promoted. I think 24 drivers on the grid is a reasonable number. Your thoughts? So what CPB is saying there, Formula One needs more teams to give the drivers who are missing out on Formula One, a chance to drive in F1 itself, because there's only 20 seats available, and there are more than probably 20 drivers out there who are more than worthy of being in Formula One, who slip through the cracks because there isn't enough seats for whatever reason. But to this, I want to say agree.
I'm going to say the same, agree as well.
Yep. Do you want to give your reasons why, Ben, as to why you agree?
So I remember, before we did have 24 drivers on the grid, and I thought that was like the optimal number, the perfect number to have. Is like, for drivers on the grid. And I feel it's not necessarily a problem with the number of, I guess, adding more teams is it could help with this, but generally I feel like F1 is it's a very cutthroat sport. So for people like Perez and Hulkenberg, because their careers didn't necessarily go the right way, they didn't necessarily go as planned or as you would have expected, because a driver like Nico Hulkenberg, in my opinion, it's unacceptable that he has never stood on an F1 podium. He's never had the opportunity to drive in a top team because he's proven himself over and over and over again that he's one of the most talented coming into the sport. With Sergio, he did obviously get his opportunity at McLaren, but I don't feel like that was representative of what he could have done or like what he can do, especially now in a top team, had they given them the opportunity. So yes, I'd like to see more teams in Formula One, but then at the same time, the problem is that F1 is very, very expensive at the moment, and just the cost of running a team is ridiculously high. Obviously, funding is a problem for even teams that are on the grid like now. Like with Williams, them being bought out by Dorilton Capital recently, because they needed an injection of cash, and for someone who's from the outside wanting to join Formula One as the start joined as a team, then it can be sort of it can draw them away. It can sort of like make them less inclined due to the fact that it's so expensive to just run a Formula One team. And I feel it. I hope these 2022 regulations can change that. I hope that they can make, with the cost cap and the budget cap and everything, it can help the sport become more appealing to certain car manufacturers to invest in, having a Formula One team. Because I genuinely think, like, as you say, there are more than just 20 of the best drivers in the world. And some of them, I feel, quite frankly, do deserve to be in Formula One, that there are drivers who do deserve to be in Formula One that aren't in Formula One, because of the fact that some other drivers are there, because they have the money to be able to. Not saying that they don't deserve it, but they basically they're able to because of the funds that they have, and the sponsorships that they're bringing along with them, and so I'd like to see more teams take part and participate in the sport, but F1 I think has bigger issues that are causing, or like that are essentially causing that teams to be less inclined to invest. Those are my thoughts anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't help that Honda withdrawn from Formula One as well, which is down to more, they're saying that the F1 technology isn't eco-friendly enough. And when you've got savers like Formula E, who of course is fully electric, and that's the future almost. Well, it is the future. In fact, you could say it's the present to some degree. More manufacturers and car manufacturers and engine manufacturers want to go down that route instead of going down Formula One, which, it will kill the sport eventually, and we don't want that to happen. Formula One it's an absolutely brilliant sport. Not that Formula E isn't a bad sport. It really isn't. I've enjoyed Formula E. It's really good. But for Formula One, it's Formula One. It's got a brilliant history to this. It's got a story that you could sit here for hours and hours and hours talking about. Then there's nothing else better to do on a Sunday afternoon than just watching, or Sunday morning, depending on where you are in the world, or even a Monday morning. When watching a Formula One race. But I want to say, I think having more teams on the grid, of course, adds more to the drama as well. Like back in 2012 when we had all that, 24 teams. Even though the back matter teams, they weren't really that competitive. They were slow. To some degree, they were in the way. There were still 24 cars on the grid, and it was still exciting to see. And 2012 was, well, in 2011, 2010 were really, really good seasons. I just think that maybe it's, are there generally are the 20 best drivers in the world right now on the F1 grid? I would say no. I would say there are drivers outside of F1 who are better, who deserve to be in Formula One, aren't in there because of like financial reasons, or they're not part of a driver academy, which can make or break a career. Because if you're part of a driver academy, for whatever reason, you've got a better chance of getting into F1 than if you aren't part of a one. However, if you do have money behind you, then that could be an even better chance. So, for example, if you're sitting down and you're wanting, you've got your main driver signed up for the following year, and you're looking at two drivers here, and you're going, right, okay, this guy here, his records are average, but he brings a lot of money to the team. He's heavily backed by some billionaire or whatever. But you've got the other guy who, again, of course, every F1 driver brings money, but some bring more than others. And you look at the stats and, wow, he's won many trophies, and he's won all of this and all of that, but he only brings this amount of money to the table. They will go for the driver who brings the more money, because money talks in Formula One. The more money you have, normally the better that you would do. And like Ben said before, F1 is a very expensive sport at this moment in time, and it's just putting people off by going there. And even the teams that are in there at the moment, who are at the back of the grid, they need that money to, like I said, to fund the team, to improve facilities, or even just keep the team afloat for that matter. Williams were one of those victims of, they brought in Stroll, they brought in Sorokin, they brought in Latifi, they brought in Russell as well, and of course Robert Kubica, who did bring a lot of money to the table to try and help the team stay afloat. Now that De Rilton have took over, now maybe money is still key, but it's maybe not as key as what it was before, and then De Rilton are starting to stir the pot a little bit. We could be ended up with one of possibly the more driver with great potential out of an F1 seat, which we will explain in the podcast on Saturday, which I think will be a travesty, but I don't want to give it here, otherwise we'll be here all day. But no, I would definitely think that we do need maybe some other teams on the grid to give young drivers, a chance to drive in Formula One, to improve their racing skills. It just have to be like a team as such where it's going to be competitive to some degree. It could just be a bog standard, just basic car, give them a chance to drive in F1, which has been spoken about, but there's talk of, well, what if they're too slow and teams trip over them, the bigger teams trip over them while lapping them or whatever. There's all kind of issues with that. Funding as well, who's going to supply the engines, who's, like I said, it's very expensive. But hopefully someday, with these new rules and regulations, teams and manufacturers and stuff can come back to Formula One, or even businessmen for that matter can invest in Formula One and have a couple more teams on the grid. I think 26 is the max you are allowed on an F1 grid. I believe that's right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 26.
I think that's right.
Yeah, so there's certainly 3 more teams allowed still. So that hopefully can happen. And like I said, bringing some more good drivers hopefully to the table. Right, the final opinion of Agree or Disagree, which of course is the title of this video, as we normally do on this series. It comes in from I'll say that again. It comes in from Ragnar. He says Perez deserved to lose his seat for 2021 based on his recent form. I'm just gonna straight in there. I'm straight in there. Going to go with disagree.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say the same. Disagree.
Yeah, Ben, give us your thoughts, mate. Why you disagree with that?
I just Sergio for me is arguably the most underrated driver on the grid, and as I said before, his stint at McLaren was it wasn't representative of truly how good he was. He's, in terms of experience, he's one of the most experienced on the grid. I think he's in his 30s now. I'm not too sure exactly what his age is, but he is, he has a lot of experience, and so in that sense, he can bring a lot to a team in terms of like car development and essentially just knowledge of how to succeed. He hasn't necessarily been in a championship winning position in his career, but he knows how to work with his engineers and how to get the optimal performance out of the car. He's a very quick driver. He demonstrated that early on in his career. When did he start? 2011.
2011.
Yeah. With Sauber, he proved that especially on a few occasions when he actually got a few podiums, that he is a very good race driver. In fact, he could have won in I think it was Malaysia 2011, where
Malaysia
Fernando.
2012.
Oh, 2012, yes, that was it. Where Fernando won the race, but he I can't remember exactly what happened. I think he ended up running wide at a certain corner, and that essentially put him out of fight. But anyway, he's a very, very quick racing driver. He's very good at tire management, especially recently, where tire management is a key part of any racing driver's racecraft. Solely because if you can extend your tires for longer than other drivers, then you open your race up to more strategical opportunities. And in terms of his talent, he's a talented driver, like most other drivers on the grid. He's I'd say he's not necessarily a very sort of as a teammate, he can maybe tend to cause a little bit of friction. I wouldn't say he's like the perfect teammate, like or like has had perfect relationships with his teammates, especially with Ocon in 2018. And it's one of the reasons why. Well, maybe it has worked. It sort of worked against him throughout his career, but generally, if we're talking about current form, then he's been as good as he's ever been, because he's a solid driver, who definitely, like Nico, definitely deserves a spot in a top team, or at least given another chance. And I think he's looking at his recent results, especially after he obviously got the virus. He essentially came back and was pretty much. It didn't take him long to get straight back into it, and just goes to show how versatile he is as a driver, like Nico Hülkenberg, who also came in and just performed straight away without necessarily too much feedback or like data given to him. So I feel like Sergio didn't deserve to lose that seat. He's definitely he's given so much to Force India / Racing Point, in terms of he's the one who actually saved them in the first place, from a financial from a financial point of view. And he's been very loyal. He's been very consistent. He's delivered results. He's delivered podiums. He's done it all. And he, unfortunately, because his last name isn't Stroll, he ended up losing his seat. And so, I mean, all the best to Sebastian. I feel like he the way he's being treated at Ferrari, I don't feel like is fair. And I'm happy that he's getting an opportunity in a fresh, in a new environment. But I would have loved to see a team up between him and Sergio in 2021.
I mean, that would be a decent lineup, and I was hoping that would have been the lineup for Aston Martin in 2021. But yeah, it is. I was sad to hear Perez leaving. And like I said about certain driver George Russell, if he's not on the grid for next year, it'll be a travesty. I would say the exact same for Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez is a really good driver. He's shown that time and time again. He's got podiums with cars that shouldn't have been on the podium. He's done well under immense pressure. He's done well against teammates. He hasn't lost against teammates since since the 2013 season with Jenson Button. He's just been incredible what he has done for Formula One and what he's done for like what you said there before about Force India Race Point. Single-handedly saved, well, not single-handedly, but one of the influences to save the team. And for him to get kicked out like that at a point where he is going to be back in a competitive car. Yes, people do reference the McLaren move, but the McLaren car was awful that year. And even Button didn't get a podium that year, which speaks volumes. Like I said earlier, Button's a good driver. And if he can't get a podium, then why do you expect Perez to get a podium as well? But maybe you could say, well, Vettel has got a podium and Charles has got a podium with Ferrari, but that's good for a different argument, I suppose. But no, Perez needs a top drive. I do hope he gets that Red Bull seat. I really hope he does. If it's not him, I hope it's Hulkenberg. I do, because I'll be honest, I've lost my tether with I've lost my patience with Albon now. That's for another video. I mean, if you I mean, if you look at his form in 2020 in Sergio Perez, despite him missing out on 2 races, if you take them away, he scored points in every single race this season, and he's 5th in the standings. He's doing really well at the moment. He's on the form of his life, well, to some degree, and of course he's got a decent lead over Lance Stroll. Now Lance Stroll has worked wonders this season. He's really impressed me, and various others as well. He's had 2 DNFs and he withdrew from the Eiffel Grand Prix, so he scored no points since his podium at the Italian Grand Prix. And that's one thing I will be critical about Racing Point, not just Sergio Perez or Stroll, just Racing Point as a whole, that they haven't got more podiums, which I was more like, how in my opinion, how has Ferrari had 2 podiums and Racing Point only had 1 with the car Racing Point have had? Which you could say, well, maybe it's not good in race trim, it's slower in race trim than in qualifying trim. But nevertheless, I think Perez is doing enough he's done more than enough to show he deserves to be there. Yes, if Stroll's dad didn't own the team, I think Stroll would have been out the door. Again, nothing against Stroll, but for me, Perez has been more consistent. He's been, but to some degree, and of course he brings a lot of money as well to the table. But if Stroll brought even more money, then maybe he could have stayed either way. I really don't know what was held behind the scenes, but it is what it is. Perez isn't with F1 team right now. He deserves to be there. I do hope he gets there. Bit of a shame that he's not going to be there next season, but never mind. Where do you think Perez will end up in 2021? Let us know in the comment section below. But guys, this is where we're going to end. Agree or disagree, thank you so much for watching as always, and thank you to Ben for joining us today as well. And of course, like I said earlier, link to his channel will be in the description below. And if you haven't already, and I'll be surprised if you haven't, then please go and subscribe to his YouTube channel. Go and follow him on social media as well. Links will be below. Do you want to give just a bit of a quick rundown as to what you've got coming up on the channel, or maybe what your channel is all about, in case anyone is coming on our channel and hasn't discovered you yet?
Well, yeah, I sort of like to cover certain storylines from the 2020 season, just to talk about and discuss certain, when something happens, I like to discuss it and give my points of view, and yeah, and then also sometimes take a look at some races from recent history, or even like from like, I did a video on Senna the other day, and yeah, just to look at F1 in overall, because it's the sport is such a great sport, and I just love to talk about and give my opinions on it, and yeah, essentially that's what I do.
Yeah, I mean, Ben's content recently has been absolutely brilliant. He's been obviously blowing up as well on social media and in YouTube as well. He's doing really, really well. Please go and check out his content. It is absolutely quality. But guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. If you're new around here, then please like and subscribe as well, and comment below if you agree or disagree with our opinions. And of course, let us know your opinions in the comment section below as well. Videos coming up for the remainder of this weekend. We've got a few snippets of the podcast coming up as well as the full podcast coming out on Saturday at 6 p.m. BST. Grand Prix race reaction will be hosted by Lyle straight after the Grand Prix in Portugal. I have forgot where we were for a minute there. We are at Portugal. So of course, looking forward to that. I hope you do enjoy the race, and of course enjoy Lyle's race reaction straight afterwards. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Watch what you're doing. Stay safe as always, and until next time, we'll see you later.